This episode is sponsored by Mission Athletics. Specializing in wrestling and jiu-jitsu with world-class instructors, Mission Athletics' 25,000 square foot facility, state-of-the-art fitness equipment, and wellness recovery ecosystem is dedicated to empowering athletes of all levels and ages to reach their highest potential, all under one roof. Learn more at missionathletics.com.
Joe Rudd is a fascinating guy. He has an absolutely wonderful story. I mean, it's a scary story, but considering that it happened over a decade ago of him getting shot, July 27th, 2013, it's really interesting to see how much he's changed in that decade, but also recounting a decade ago of memories is definitely something most people don't want to go into, but Joe just has a very tough mindset on that, of just not wanting to forget. And that's something that he mentioned off the pod, which is that most people want to forget those kind of incidents of like getting shot, but he doesn't. He wants to remember it. And that's the amount of guts to have that kind of mindset is incredible. So so there won't be any like pictures of the real footage or anything. There won't be any cuts to the actual scene itself, just because YouTube has a bunch of policies on showing blood. In the description, I'll put a bunch of links or and information around the event. I also have it on my website, substratum611.com. I'll keep it updated. Whenever I find more stuff, I'll put it on my website. In the actual recording, we go into his story about halfway through, but in the editing, I put it at the very beginning just because I think it's something it's just a great place to start with. After this little segment, there's going to be a little disclaimer, and then we'll get right into the video.
This episode contains a first-hand account of a shooting incident and may include descriptions of violence, injury, and trauma that some listeners may find disturbing. Our guest's recollection may differ from other accounts or official records related to the incident discussed. The views, information, and opinions expressed by our guest represent their personal experience and perspective only. Viewer and listener discretion is advised.
July 27th, 2013, London, Ohio.
Kind of a backstory. We're having our 20th class reunion for high school. And they actually put it on my birthday, which is July 20th. I'm back there. I drove. I didn't fly back then, so I drove back there. Spent the week, and then my birthday hit. We had our class reunion. Seen a lot of my old buddies and classmates I hadn't seen in a while. It was kind of the first big, 10 kind of a little bit, but 20 was really, you went to see how much people were changing, the people that grew up and you hadn't seen for a long time. But the 20th was on my birthday. We had the class reunion, and the following week, I stayed for one more week, and again, it's July 27th, and I'm loading, getting ready to go. I get my boy Zane ready to go. He's 7 at the time, and school's not quite going to start quite yet because I came back a little earlier because of the class reunion. So if I got back to Virginia, he would have to have been hanging out in my office for some time before school started, and he'd much rather be on the acreage with Grandma and Grandpa running around. So 10 minutes before I left, he made a decision. Hey, Dad, can I stay here? And you come back and get me in a few weeks. I'm like, I was quite a bit younger at the time, so that drive was not that bad, right? I was 39 at the time. So I a lot of times, well, back then I was able to start in the middle of the night and drive all the way straight through, which is like 16 hours. Nowadays, a different story, but I decided to hang around until late because I wanted to time it to where I was pretty much home before the sun started to come up, right? So I left around, I want to say it was around 10:30 or so, and I, cruising along, and halfway between Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and Northern Virginia, about the halfway point is Dayton, Ohio to Columbus, Ohio, right in that area. So I'd gotten about halfway, and it was time for me to fill up for gas, and I pull into this exit off of I-70, which is the London, Ohio exit that has a TA truck stop there. I pull in, and this is around 4:30 in the morning, so it's still dark out. I pull in and I notice two kids out on the side of the road at 4:30 in the morning. And, you know, I'm I'm thinking about that a little bit. It's kind of stuck in my head. Seems like it's a little odd, but the thoughts that are going through my head were, okay, maybe their parents are truck drivers and they're just out kicking rocks and stretching, and their parents are sleeping or something, and they're waiting to get back on the road. But just for the thought that I really don't know why they're out there, I picked the farthest pump away. So I already had the mindset of situational awareness kind of at that point in time. So I picked the farthest pump away. As I'm pumping gas, I can look between the two pumps and keep an eye on them, but it doesn't look like I'm obviously wondering if they're going to come over or anything like that. I just want to make sure I don't cause any issues by staring or making it look like I'm thinking something, right? So I kind of keep an eye on them, and I decided to go into the gas station to use the restroom, get some snacks so I could get back on the road. As I'm walking out of the truck stop, I had my hands full. I had back then a Mountain Dew and some cookies or something, but that was definitely a Mountain Dew. And I walk out of the truck stop front doors, and I look down, and the two kids are sitting on the curb. Now, I didn't feel threatened because they're sitting on the curb, right? As I walk on by, I'm about halfway to my car, and I feel this tap on the back of my head. Now, it wasn't like someone swinging something at me, but it was metal hitting me in the back of the head. Immediately, without any thought at all, I turned immediately because I knew it was them. Didn't know it was a gun, but I knew that something was going on, and I have to face my problems. I have to face. You don't turn and if I would have just ran away, I probably would have got shot in the back right off the bat. But instead, I went to face them immediately. So the gun being on the back of my head, I turn, and now it's on my face. And immediately, they just pull the trigger. So if I didn't turn, I would have took the shot in the back of the head, and I probably wouldn't be sitting here today. But I happened to turn almost at the perfect angle, because when the bullet went through my face, it hit my jawbone, blew my jawbone apart. It's a 22 caliber.
Oh, okay. Well, it wasn't 9mm or anything.
Nope, it was 22. But if you know anything about 22s, they a lot of times they won't penetrate, but they'll bounce around. So when the bullet hit my jawbone blew apart, but then the bullet blew apart too. So shrapnel went everywhere. Now, the biggest part of that shrapnel hit my C1. If you know the spine, there's little your vertebra have little loops on the outside where there's arteries that run up and down your spine, right? Well, that bullet took off the edge of one of those loops and stopped right there. Well, it's 1/8 of an inch from the artery in my neck. So when people know it's back there, it's kind of bad to say, but I was like, one day someone's going to really grab that and smash it in there, and I'll probably stroke out on the on the mat, right? But you know what? What better place to go? Where I love to be, right? But think about that, 1/8 of an inch, right? And all that is me turning and 1/8 of an inch in all directions probably would have killed me. And not only that one big piece, but I still got shrapnel all the way through my face. So facing my problems right then and there, and turning to see what was going on saved my life immediately. So I take the bullet, and the blast spins me around, and I literally flip in the air. At that moment, I'm out for a second. But as I'm going to the ground, I wake back up again, and I hit the ground, and I'm on every detail is on like micro movements the world is slowing down, and it's one of those things that
Was it like a massive adrenaline dump?
it was, but a lot of times when that adrenaline dump happens or goes away, you pass out. So I never passed out. So I've got this massive adrenaline dump, but I'm in this mode where everything I see is burnt and etched into my memory, and I'm thinking at speeds that I didn't think I could think of, right? Because every second counts at this point. So, but remember, I took this shot with the gun on my face, so all the soot burned into my face. My ear on this side is completely dead because the shock waves and the noise of being that close just destroyed that ear. From there, I'm unable. Also, the vibrations from the bullet and everything through my skull damaged this ear on this side, just in vibrations. So now, as I'm woke up, I'm looking up and the gun's at my forehead, and it's about this far away, right? And I'm looking up at them, so I can't hear nothing because it's the shock and I feel like I'm reading lips, but I know what they want, right? It's got to be my car, it's got to be money, it's got to be something. It's most likely that because they were outside kicking rocks and stuff, so it had to be that. So it just happened at that time, and I still do this today. I had my keys and my wallet in my front pocket. I don't put them in my back. Now, I'm laying flat on my back with a bullet hole in my head and with a gun pointed at my forehead. I reach in my pocket and I take my stuff and I throw it. Even with them standing right above me, there's two kids, one with a gun and the other one is out of my vision, but I'm having trouble finding them or seeing them at the moment. So I just throw my keys and wallet towards the car and I get up and I start running. I'm running, and I'm like tunnel vision of the handles on the door. To this day I can remember the patterns etched in from the grips on the door. The details of that is just amazingly added up. Give me 1 second. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Oh, that's okay. It's my son. Sorry.
That's actually one thing that you mentioned on the letter that you sent to the Ohio Senate, I think, that if your son was there, everything would have been completely different.
Would have been completely different, right? I'm glad you brought that up, because if my son at 4:30 in the morning, he would have been sleeping in the back seat of that car, and my windows were tinted enough that the folks that shot me, the kids that shot me, would not have realized they were in there. But I know they're in there, so they would have never got those keys. I would have ate them. I would have threw them on top of the truck stop. The last thing they're getting is inside that car. And I might have died right there. And I would have died because if my boy was in that car, there would have been no chance that they would ever get those keys. So knowing that 10 minutes before that, a miracle, he decided not to go on that trip. And I think it was already, I'm a believer that somebody started looking at me at that point, or looking over me at that time, that was the first thing that someone knew that things were going to go to bad, and they started off by keeping my son with my parents, right? So here I am. I throw my keys and wallet. I get up. I'm running towards the handles. It's tunnel vision. I'm so focused on grabbing those handles and getting inside the building, but I'm also thinking that I'm going to get shot in the back, but the bullet never comes, right? I get inside and I run and I slide on my knees, and this gentleman, calmly as could be, turns around and kneels down and sees that I'm a complete mess. This guy didn't even flinch, didn't even worry about what was going on except focusing on me. Now, I have a wound that is bleeding, so if you ever cut yourself shaving, you know exactly how you bleed out of your face. I'm looking at myself, but I can't see my wound. And one side of my body, this side, which I rolled across my own puddle, was completely covered in blood. But it was this side that was actually shot. And I remember thinking that I'm going to bleed to death, right? And so I'm sitting on my knees because I slid in on my knees, and this gentleman just turns around and calmly keeps talking to me, and just keeps me calm. And turns out later on he's a war veteran. This
So,
didn't
so
faze him.
someone else comes into the scene.
Yeah, because when I run into the truck stop, he's paying for stuff at the counter, and I'm running toward the counter as fast as I can, and I just do that Elvis slide or whatever on my knees, baseball slide right in on my knees. He turns around, kneels down, and immediately just starts talking to me, and I truly believed with him and me not seeing my wound kept me from passing out. Most people go in shock and they're done, right? I never went in. I was probably in shock, but I never. My whole goal was do not pass out, do not go lights out, because I don't know where they're at. They could still be out there coming back in, and I got to stay so calm. And that was the hardest thing in my life to do, was to stay from passing out. It took every little bit of everything to keep me from just collapsing right there. And if you ever seen the pictures of that, I am completely covered with sweat, and I'm just, my body's going into shock, but the last thing I'm gonna do is gonna pass out. But this gentleman's keeping me calm the best he can. It's just out in the country a little bit. It's not right close. It's like
It's not city. It's not.
Yeah. It's out. It takes about 45 minutes to an hour for the ambulance to get there. Yeah. So I'm trying to stay awake for a long time. The first person that shows up is a deputy sheriff. And as you know, there's a documentary about my story along with another person that was involved in an earlier incident. This deputy sheriff comes in and he sees me, and I talked about the C1 because it was bloated out the back here, like there's something major damage in the spine and the neck, and they see the wound, they see the blood, and they see how calm I'm acting, and notice that I can mumble things out, right? So they start videotaping me because the deputy thought that, okay, this is the best witness we have. He has no ID on him. We don't know who he is. If he dies here, that car, there's nothing. I'm John Doe, right? So he starts videotaping me and asking me questions about the whole situation. I'm able to identify these kids with pretty much exactly what they're wearing, and when I start telling details, they literally show me a picture that I identify them. There are two kids wanted for murder because they had already killed the 3 people. Now, in the documentary, it talks about one, and the only reason they talk about that one, they did our trials together because it was so locked up that there was no way that you could say it's not them, right? There was no defense that could defend these kids because it's all on camera. The other gentleman was shot directly in the head twice as a clerk, and they finished him off. Now, what's interesting about that is everybody that they killed, the ones that the documentary doesn't even talk about, they shot him twice in the head, so there's no witnesses. So think about that. Here I am, the one that got off the ground and ran for his life. If I would have just handed that stuff to him, they would have finished me off. Why not? Got a couple more rounds in that revolver. It was like an old Western revolver, right? And they, it didn't come because I probably shocked the crap out of him getting off the ground the way I did and run back into the store. Now, just so I don't forget, I might have told you what my favorite move in jiu-jitsu was, right? Standing base. It's because when I looked back on this, every little detail of their face in the dark, clothing, everything is etched in my brain forever. The one thing I don't remember what I did or how I did it was get off the ground because I didn't have to think about it, right? And that's that's powerful because, people don't realize, it's not just the chokes. It's not just the dislocations. It's keeping off the ground or getting up the most efficient way you can to save your life, right? So standing base is there's going to be a lot of experts in Iowa about how to get off the ground properly. So deputy's filming me. I tell them the make and model of car that I have. I identify them. So they're wanted for murder. And, cause again, if I die, the deputy thought I was people that usually are that calm and that everything seems all right. They die in the ambulance on the way there. It's that adrenaline or that
Euphoria.
Yep. And it seems like they're all okay, but they don't make it to the hospital. He was aware enough of that he wanted to get as much information out of me as possible.
Yeah, and this was before like body cams became standard.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So going back, an off-duty officer in Dayton, Ohio. Now there's a wide range of the car stolen, another shooting, known that these kids are already wanted, and an off-duty cop sees my car parked off to the side of the road in town, and they raid the car, and they're in there with the gun, and no one else dies, right? So essentially, I was the last person to put these kids away, and I truly believe that's why I'm here today, is because it had to end, and someone made that possible. Somebody was watching over me that day. I truly believe that, and my purpose was to stop the killing. But the one thing that I want to go back to that I messed up on, situational awareness. I had it all correct, I feel, until I failed when I walked by them when they're on the ground, right? They're sitting there. I might have talked about this in the past, but my thing is I compare it to a parrot. And I might be completely wrong about this, but this is what I believe. I knew a guy that used to own a parrot, and he told me he had the parrot hanging in the cage well above his height. And the parrot was friendly as could be until you took the parrot and you lowered it below the owner. The parrot doesn't feel dominant anymore. So I think that's like if you think about a pirate, the parrot's on the shoulder because he's slightly taller. So he's your friend. So I look at this as I felt like I was the parrot because, they're down there. They can't do nothing to me. And I was wrong because they got up and they came up from behind me, right? So I use that scenario a lot, and it's going back to the blue belts that wanted to find the answer to saving his family. There's nothing out there, but the closest thing that I believe that will save your family is situational awareness. If you're driving through an area and it looks like there's a group of kids or people that are up to no good, maybe I should just go down to the next door, especially when it's 4:00 in the morning, right? And I think we should all live that way. And where we fail is in our own neighborhoods, in our own place where we grow up or where we spend every day of our life. We come out and we run down the same street. We've been run down the same street for 20 some years and it's still dark out. Well, we get displacent, right? I think that's the word.
Complacent?
Complacent. Thank you. Sometimes I get those words
displacent.
Right. Displacement. Yeah, displacement. I move people where I want them. No. Thank you for correcting me on that. Yeah.
It's the complacency or safety complacency.
Yeah. So when doesn't mean that I feel completely safe in my area. Doesn't mean bad things can't come to my area. And that's what happens nowadays, right? You hear in this little off subject, but you hear about, kids being snagged out of their yards in Iowa, of all places. It's the most peaceful place in state in the country. To me, that's the way I grew up. But kids don't can't just go out and play in the yard and wave at their parents. I'll see you when the sun's going down, and they don't see them all day, and you show up for dinner, right? You can't do that no more because the neighborhoods aren't what they used to be. Bad things come to your neighborhood. So understanding that you can't be so comfortable that you being on a phone walking down the street is something. I don't care what street you're on. It's probably something you shouldn't do, even if you're by yourself, because you got to be looking what's your environment you're in and what's around you.
Even if you're in a group.
I say even. Well,
You said because if you're by yourself, then that's kind of obvious. Like you're already by yourself.
Well, you think you're by yourself, right? So you think you're by yourself, but behind a tree, a block down the street, is someone waiting for you. I'm not going to see that.
Yeah. At the same time, it's also not good to be paranoid about things because then you'll create stories that don't exist.
And that's something I battle, and I've been working on it for a while. After I got shot and after I got back onto the street, I was bed rest for 8 months. They literally took my floating rib to replace my jaw. I battled infection really bad and literally had a tube in my neck for that was one of the last things. It was 8 months. That was the last thing that came off. Has cervical collar. My jaws were wired shut, so I couldn't eat. I drank Assure for 8 months. That's literally, and my mom would make potato soup, grind it up. That's about the only soup that I can eat, and it doesn't really taste like it used to. But I tried grinding up pizza. Pizza does not taste good ground up. It's not pizza no more. But potato soup ground up, still potato soup, and that's Assure and potato soup I ate for 8 months. The bad thing about that is the sugar in Assure rotted all my teeth out. So I don't have any teeth no more. But the bad thing about that, I couldn't fix them for a few years afterwards. So my teeth were breaking off, and I had cavities in every single one of them. But when I got my jaws unwired, they only opened that far. So it took me like almost a year with this medieval device, put it in my mouth to stretch the jaw. As you know, I eat Mentos all the time. Yeah. And the reason that is that people are always like, why does he eat Mentos all the time? Well, it's probably it's like an OCD thing now, because I'm afraid, because I would do all this work to get my jaw open, and I wake up the next day, it's like Groundhog Day. It was go back again. So my brilliant idea was I started with gum, and I chewed gum all night long, all day long, so I could keep things moving so they wouldn't lock up. Well, when I got my teeth removed and I have dentures now, gum sticks to it. So I had to switch to something else, and it's Mentos. Mentos commercial, right?
That would be the worst crossover in the world. Jiu-Jitsu and Mentos.
Yeah. I'm waiting for the patch of sponsorship, right? But, being aware of your surroundings, we're not going to be perfect all the time. And you talked about that can be very stressful, and you start making up scenarios and being paranoid. I'm not going to lie, I spent a lot of years being very paranoid. I couldn't go to gas stations. And if it was looking like the sun was going down, I wouldn't go.
Yeah, of course not.
If I pulled up to a store and there was kids out front just kind of hanging around, I keep driving. It doesn't matter what race, doesn't matter. If there's a group of kids, my mindset was all it takes is one bad apple in that group, like a wolf pack, of wild dogs. One does something, the rest follow, or one places a bet and pressures the other one to do something. That's what my mindset was for a long time. And I've now gotten better when I go into a restaurant. Imagine those first few years, I would look at everybody's face. If there was 20 people in that room, I studied all 20 of them. And that's mentally stressing. That will take you into some bad places, because the mind can't continuously do that. What I would do is I would look at them, and if they looked like they were smiling and happy, they weren't much of a threat. But if they looked like they were having a bad day, I was monitoring them. And I would find a place where I would face the door and know where I'm at in the room and avoid people coming up behind me. Now, a big problem of that is my ears are bad, so I couldn't, I can't hear people coming up behind me. So that was an added stressor, looking over my shoulder constantly. And I had hearing aids for a while, but it didn't really help. All it did was amplify junk in this ear and bring it to this ear and just make this one extremely loud. So it made me hear better, but I couldn't hear where it was coming from. And I still have that problem today. But it's gotten a lot better. Oddly enough, one of the craziest things that bothers me the most, and it literally sets me off, is a horn honk. I don't know why. It's got to be the loud, shocking sound of someone just laying on the horn. There's violent horns. There's, I'm mad because you sat here too long, or there's just little taps to just let somebody know you're on the, and it's not even towards me. It could be the next car over, and my mindset switches and I kind of get angry. But I've grown a lot since then. I'm a black belt, and I think solving my problems like a black belt will solve their problems, right? But kind of get back to the story a little bit to wrap that up. 8 months of rehab. I'd already had jiu-jitsu under my belt, and being a blue belt, most of the people thought I just quit. They here one day, gone the next. Well, you got that blue belt blues or whatever, and quit. That wasn't the case for me. I sat at home, and all I could do is write on a notebook, and I couldn't talk. And my mom's taking care of me and my son, and we're, I'm thinking about jiu-jitsu because I know that's what I need to help me when I get out of here, right? But I'm so disabled at this point. I had vertigo for like 6 months. Actually, probably longer. It was actually longer than that, where I couldn't lay flat because I just continuously flip. So I had to sleep at 45. But also, I'd get water buildup in my trach tube, and I would almost drowned at night. So I literally had to set at an angle that the water would drip out. And if I get flat, I would start flipping continuously. And I thought I was going to be permanently disabled with that, but it finally went away after getting on the mat a little bit. But I knew the power that jiu-jitsu could help me mentally, and all I could do was think about getting back on the mat. And when it first happened, my boy was already doing jiu-jitsu. I brought him back and had him in the kids class, and no one recognized me because I had 8 months of beard growing up, coming out of a cervical collar that made me look like a 90-year-old. And then I had a cane, and because I was completely withered away, I was down to 145. And I've been 165 since I was in high school. So I was 145 pounds. No one recognized me. And I finally, found somebody that I really hung out with in jiu-jitsu, and they were there and they seen me, and I couldn't talk to him yet because I still had the trach in. But my mom brought me, and I waved him down, and I was able to explain to him who I was. And then all of a sudden you see people lighting up like, it's Joe, right? So what I did those months was until the collar came off and I got myself built back up, I could get on the mat. I'd sit there and watch my son do jiu-jitsu, and I was learning. So when we talk about, hey, when you get injured, come on in, because I know the power of sitting it and just watching. If you have muscle memory built in already, you can watch jiu-jitsu and do it in your head, and then, when the time comes, you get on the mat, and within 2 or 3 tries, you're doing it in a live roll. That's how powerful this learning. There's different ways of learning, visually, hearing it, feeling it, watching it be done. There's different ways of learning, and if you know that everybody the way you teach should be in that manner, because everybody learns differently. So another reason for making it for everybody is learn how to teach that can teach all different people as well, the way they learn, right? But got back on and started doing jiu-jitsu. Now, when we talk about bad people coming to your area and you get comfortable and you don't even think about those situations, this is part of the story that most people won't pick up in the documentary. But when I go back and I say someone was watching over me, and when you hear the rest of the story, you'll understand, like, wow, how could everything that could go wrong to make this happen did, but everything that could go right in the same time did. So these kids got to that truck stop somehow. And it all starts, they're already wanted for murder, for killing one's own brother, and another, I believe a drug deal that went wrong. And they're on the run. They stole this car from one of the kids' girlfriends. When the cops, because they know they're already, they were caught on film killing the clerk. And then the girlfriend comes forward and says that they stole their car. So there are wanted posters out that show their faces and that they've stole this make and model of car. Well, that earlier that night or the night before, because they got there for a little while and waited until the right person, which seemed to be me, I guess, showed up. They're driving their car between Columbus and Dayton because they know they were trying to get to some family or friends in Dayton. Their car breaks down. It either runs out of gas or whatever, but it's on the side of the road. A highway patrolman that is a year from retirement is driving down the road. He sees the car pulled over and he comes over and reads the plate on the car to the dispatch and gets one letter wrong. It comes back as the wrong make and model. When that happens, they're supposed to repeat it again to the dispatch, but they're talking about, their buddies or whatever, and there's got stories going. He doesn't repeat it. He just marks it up as don't care. Gets back in the car, drives down the road, and sees these two kids walking on the side of an interstate, I-70. He pulls over to them, and they could walk up to the side of the car. He rolls down the window, and he goes, "Hey, what are you guys doing? Is that your car back there that broke down or whatever?" And it's like, "Yeah, we ran out of gas. We're walking up to the truck stop to call my uncle to come and get us some gas." And he goes, "Get in." Well, if you talk to probably any, police officer or anybody like that, and you ask them what they're supposed to do, whether they're the things that they got to do their job right, you never put anybody in your back of your car unless you pat them down and you check their ID. He doesn't check their ID, doesn't pat them down, puts two known murderers in the back of his car with a weapon and drives them to the truck stop and drops them off and then leaves. He was later asked in court, "What do you think would have happened if you tried to pat him down?" "Oh, I'd probably be dead. There would have been a gunfight. Someone would have died." And sure enough, that's probably what would have happened. Now, I don't blame, I could sit and live in the past and blame the kids and him and live a life of misery, always thinking what ifs, or just pack up and do what I do now. Don't have hatred in your heart, and don't use that, what they did to you, and spread it to others, right? I don't have to treat others differently because of them. And just don't live life in hate. I've just never done it. And even with the officer, he knew that he messed up, and it was because he'd done that job for, his whole career. He was a year from retiring. It was just going out and doing something he's done 1,000,000 times. And this time he's like, "Man, you know what? I've done it 1,000,000 times. Don't really care. I'm just finishing this last year out so I can go sit on a beach," type of mindset, right?
Yeah,
and
it's that recurring term that's always in like almost every military, someone who's gone through military, complacency kills.
Yeah.
In this
That's
case,
exactly
in this case, it could have killed you.
It could have killed me. You know, I never wanted to become rich because of this. I never wanted to, you know, get revenge on anybody or anything like that. But I went through a lot of stuff to get to where I am today, and you know, a lot of hospital bills, things like that. And all I wanted to do is have the state of Ohio help me out. And it didn't work out that way, but that's okay. You know, I finally got those bills paid off and moved on, and life is good. But long story short is you can't live your life in hate. And I truly believe I was put on earth to survive that, to stop that killing. Because they would have continued. I'm sure more people would have died before the end of that catch, right? But I truly believe that's why I'm here. And getting back to how I want to continue my jiu-jitsu career in teaching, and what I want to bring into Mission Athletics is, if you want to do sports jiu-jitsu, I'll be in your corner. If you want to do self-defense, I'll be in your corner. But all the sports jiu-jitsu that I teach you will be with a self-defense mindset.
We can start with the first one. Wherever you want to start, you can just start.
Okay.
I don't have any introductions. We just get right into it.
Just go right into it.
Go right into it. Like,
Gotcha.
I don't like screw the audience. They don't matter.
Started jiu-jitsu in 2010. I believe it was around November timeframe of 2010. And as you know, with jiu-jitsu, it can get very addicting. And I immediately signed my oldest son when he was 4 years old, and it was me and him, and I bought my gi first day, and I bought him a gi that same time. We just signed up, and a lot of people don't dive into something where you start buying equipment right away.
Oh, was this out in Iowa?
No, this was here in Sterling, Virginia, where Peter Sauer had his headquarters. Not the first place he started at when he got to Northern Virginia, but he moved into a place in Sterling, right up Highway 7. And I was, you know, at that age where I was wanting to get back in shape and you know, do something athletic, and I wanted to get my son involved as well. So I just, you know, at that time UFC was really taking off, and you started hearing a lot more about jiu-jitsu. And at first, you know, I grew up wrestling in Iowa at a young age, and I ended up stopping when I got to high school. I got injured. I blew my ACL out when I was a sophomore, and after that, back then the ACL surgeries were a lot different than they are today. Literally, it took, you know, a year of rehab just to be functional. But I never had my flexibility back. It took me a long time to gain flexibility back. So I did things like I tried to do cross country after I got my surgery, which I was not very good at because I've never been a runner. But I was just trying to get my cardio up and get in good shape, and get back on the team and start wrestling.
Yeah. Did you grow up more on team sports before jiu-jitsu?
No. Well, I started wrestling in second grade, and kind of just kept doing it from there. I did play football, but I quit my football my freshman year because when I injured myself my sophomore year, I didn't want to jeopardize. Wrestling was my sport, and I did football because it was just something everybody else was doing at school, and I was a lineman, so I wasn't going to make a career out of it by any means.
What about wrestling did you like the most about it? Like, why did you keep going back to wrestling?
Well, it's interesting, and I tell people today, you say, you know, how many wrestlers are out there that have ever been bullied, right? And the answer is probably pretty small. especially after they've learned how to wrestle or grapple, the bullying kind of stops. So in second grade, I was, kind of more of a shy kid, and I started getting bullied quite a bit. And one of my friends got into wrestling, and I decided to jump on into it as well. But growing up in Iowa, that was, if you had any kind of wrestling in your school, you most likely would do it, right? Because it's a big wrestling state. But I was getting bullied at the time, and not that was the main reason that I got into wrestling, but after I started wrestling, the bullying kind of stopped. And I don't know if it was, I think it's just a lot of times bullies don't join in sports that they have to go out and prove themselves in, right? It's kind of
Was it like as you started wrestling more, was it like your body language that changed, or like the way you held
I just
yourself?
think I think it gave me confidence, and wrestling obviously is, as we start bringing in jiu-jitsu later on, the differences between the two is a lot of times wrestling back then was aggressive. It was, you're going 100%. And
100% with your own teammates, not just competitions.
In competition.
Okay.
As teammates, you could train at 100%, or a lot of times it was just drilling and hitting moves on repeat, right? And that's kind of how, we got, you do those high reps to get that muscle memory, right? Because if you're wrestling, just like in jiu-jitsu, if you think of that you have to do something, when you think about it, you're already too late, right? So you drill these moves over and over again, and until they just fire on muscle memory, and so with that, I started going to tournaments as a young kid, and obviously I didn't do as well as I'd hoped in the beginning, lost a lot. But again, my confidence started getting more and more, getting better.
Yeah, that was basically the first 6 months of my jiu-jitsu. It was like the first 3 months, it's like, oh, I'm better than I was 3 months ago. But then that second 3 months becomes more of, I didn't improve, but I've become a better person.
Yeah.
Almost. And then that's like that's what keeps me going back.
Yeah. Yep. And that's the odd thing that with me at the time was the friend that got me into wrestling, we were at the same weight. So he would whip my butt. We'd go to these tournaments. We would ride together. My mom would drive, we'd pick him up on the way to the tournament, and we'd go, and we'd be the same weight. And it was odd. I never thought I never let it affect my friendship with him, but he would win every time. Right. But in the back of my head, I set a goal for myself that I will catch him one day. And, but this went on for about 2 years, where at that time wrestling was in school, but they didn't it wasn't a school sport. It
wasn't like a very well-known sport.
Well,
like compared to lacrosse or baseball or.
No, in wrestling, it'd be opposite in Iowa.
Yeah.
So lacrosse is
right. Because
you ask somebody in Iowa what lacrosse is, they'll look at you like, what? But it was a sport that we learned in school, right? It'd be like like in Virginia, they don't do wrestling until you get to high school. They do club wrestling early on, right? Just like club volleyball, club, whatever. But in Iowa, we actually trained in our elementary school, and then in junior high, we would actually go to the high school and train, and that was normal. But it wasn't like the school would throw events. Like we didn't have a season where we go against every other school in the area.
Yeah, so it wasn't like school-wide socialized.
Yes, yeah, but it grows into that as you get to high school. But so there was no school sanctioned, I guess would be the word, events that were you'd bring other schools in the state to come together at that younger age at the time. But what you do is you would train, and then we'd go to tournaments, not as a team, but you would kind of represent your school, but it wasn't based on there was a tournament 3 hours away. You jumped in the car and got there, and you registered while you were there, and you wrestled in that meet or that tournament.
Yeah. But that's basically like jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, actually, now that you think that you bring that up, you're exactly right. It's kind of exactly like jiu-jitsu at that younger age with wrestling. But as you get into middle school and high school, now the school's set up. It's just like a regular wrestling season in school, just like going to play the rival team in town, and that starts around the middle school time frame. But anything below that, second grade, first grade, you're traveling on your own and with your parents to take you to these tournaments.
Before you got into jiu-jitsu, what would be like one of the biggest lessons you learned in wrestling?
Wrestling it's a team sport, but it's individual, right? You go out there and you wrestle your match, and the biggest thing that I picked up from that is, obviously, if you want to be good, you gotta put in your effort, right? You're not going to have a teammate out there with you to push you or help you across the line to win. It's similar to gymnastics. You're definitely going to be out there by yourself. So, not that you're out there to score points so your team can win for the next weight to come out, but it really taught me discipline. Really taught me to work hard.
Is that because of the emphasis on individuality?
I think it is. And then just between wrestling and jiu-jitsu, wrestling you weigh in and you go out and you could be looking at a mirror image of yourself.
A physical mirror.
Physical, yes, yeah, definitely. Technically, it could be completely different, right? And jiu-jitsu is similar to that when you do weight classes. But in jiu-jitsu, you can do absolutes, or it can be it's more based on rank at that point in time as well, what division you're in and things like that. But in wrestling, you're typically going against somebody. If you're in high school at this point, you're on the starting varsity team. You're going to be going against a rival team at a person that's at your same weight now, and so the differences could be weight's one attribute, but they could be 6'5" and skinny, skin and bones, or you could be 4 foot tall and just muscular and jacked, and but the weight's the same, right? So with that, that's kind of one of the main differences between jiu-jitsu and wrestling is it's a little bit more controlled, and you're not going to have an absolute match in wrestling unless it's not sanctioned by the school or a college or anything like that. Typically, it's weight driven.
Yeah. So so let's say you have that mirror image of you and someone else, same person, like basically they look exactly like you, like a complete doppelganger. Is the biggest thing just the mental difference?
It can be. A lot of times, the person that's there, they don't have to cut one bit of weight, right? Their weight is spot on. Say, let's pick the lowest weight in high school at one time was 103. You could cut weight, and back then, like now, they control that. You gotta take these dehydration tests where you can only cut so much weight. Back then, you could cut 30 pounds. If you could make it and still function, and you beat everybody else for that spot on your team, it's you, right? But you could also come in at exactly 103 and not have to cut any weight. But you could be at an advantage there or disadvantage. It all depends on how that prep went for your opponent to get down to that weight. If it was an easy weight cut, he's going to, before that match starts at the end of the day, he's going to put a lot of that water weight back on. So he's going to be recovered, and he's going to have an attribute of weight that he didn't have at weigh-in.
Is it efficient preparation or like effective preparation, or like
It's completely to you. Your destiny on how you're going to do that day is all about the preparation that you put in before that. You don't want to start a weight cut the day before. Even though I could cut 10 pounds from the last practice to the weigh-in in the morning, obviously it's all water weight. But if you come in 20 pounds over a day before, you're probably not going to make that weight. So it comes down to discipline again. So at a young age, you learn how to be disciplined, where a lot of people don't learn that until they get out of school and move out of home and they have to do things on their own. But you're a kid that's learning how to, cut weight the best way you can. And if you do it wrong, you'll probably lose that day because you're going to be no energy at all. And it's in your hands. So one of the biggest things you learn from wrestling is preparation and teaching yourself how to be disciplined. And once you figure that out, it's a lifelong, something you can put in your back pocket that will be there for you later on. And that's kind of what attracted me to jiu-jitsu, after taking a break over quite a few years as I was getting my life going to college and getting a career started. I kind of walked away from wrestling, and I found my way back into it, just walking into a Peter Sauer gym one day. But I knew the power and what grappling could do for you, right? Not only just keeping in shape, but putting discipline back in your life, so you can, and just knowing that, hey, I can be good at this if I put my effort into it. No one else is going to make me good. I might have someone hounding me and telling me, go do this, but at the end of the day, it's me doing my jiu-jitsu, and it's my path up to that I can choose to take it. It doesn't mean that all our goals are going to be the same. Your goal in jiu-jitsu or wrestling, your goal is to win.
So wrestling has more emphasis on the competition side.
It does. Again, wrestling, not to say that wrestling is pretty amazing when it comes to if you have wrestling in your back pocket, you're going to be pretty decent against the average person. If you have to defend yourself, you can, you pick them up and hit them with the world, right? So having that in your back pocket is a nice to have. And I look at it as a self-defense thing. I've always had the mindset of don't ever give your back to them, right? Keep your weapons facing your attacker, or don't, always try your best to understand that someone can always come up behind you and attack you, right? And so just muscle memory, keeping off your back can keep you, can put you in a bad situation in a non-sport environment.
Yes, just before weighing in, they cut all the weight, and then when they get to the actual competition, they're usually a little bit higher.
Yeah, if they're able to cut the weight and make the weight. If you didn't make the weight, you had to forfeit the match.
Right. Yeah, and then there's the habits, the muscle memory. A lot of that just goes around to like long-term preparation. Like you can take the shortcut of cutting all the weight just before the competition, but that's gonna, like, your body's not meant to do that unless you're doing like not like a bodybuilding competition where it's like, or the aesthetics. I forgot what they call it. Like when you train, when you like get all the aesthetics of your body, the muscles and everything, so it's like it looks good in front of a camera. That's a lot different than like a competition. Like if you apply this like to the general scope of life, that the preparation, the short-term preparation will never be as effective as long-term preparation.
Long-term preparation means that you're not waiting to the last minute. Waiting on the last minute for a lot of things can be beneficial in some cases, but when it comes to having to do with this over and over and over and over again, starting at a young age and going all the way to high school. And if you want to move on into college and wrestle at college, you're most of your life, your first 12 years of your life or whatever is prepping to be at a weight. And we're growing as kids, right? So you might fall into an area where the cut wasn't too bad 1 year, but you went through this growth spurt, and then there's an opening in a lineup, and you got state champions around each side, and now that's turned into a 25-pound weight cut. Now, if you didn't build that discipline early on of making it a long-term preparation, you very well may not make that weight ever, or may not get back in that lineup because you don't know how to prep properly. But if you're this ones that roll, and again, if your weight cut is really small, as long as you can keep that consistent through your career, you don't have a problem. But that consistency, we don't have control of. Typically, as we're growing, we can't control our growth spurts, right? So it just shows that you're going to be way better off learning how to prep over a longer period of time, and most likely, if you're able to do that, you'll stay in shape and stay ready more often as well, right? If you in that, it also makes you disciplined on your eating habits and a year round, right? Wrestling, folk style wrestling is typically seasonal during the winter months, and then off season folk style wrestling, you got freestyle and Greco. But some people are just there for folk style and they do their prep just for that season, and then they take the whole summer off and wait until November comes back around and they start doing it all again. But if you're really, really serious about it, you will manage that weight year round. Now, if you imagine if you did that from a young age all the way up until if you were good enough to be, a world champion or Olympian champion, that discipline started way early and it's year round. So it's a way of life at that point. And you can see how jiu-jitsu can be a way of life as well. But with jiu-jitsu, at the moment, unless you compete, it's very, very flexible on you can make it as disciplined as you want, but it's all based on what you want to get out of it, right? It's about what your goals are. And I've realized over the years, and I've probably talked about this with others before, but it took me a while to figure it out. You got to make it about you, right? But
not in a selfish kind of way.
No, because for an example, I've been a black belt for almost 4 years now. I think November will be my 4th year. Yeah, I believe that's correct. But I've been teaching since I was a purple belt. Now, when I first got my black belt, I had a close friend at the time, but it was jiu-jitsu friendship, right? That can turn into lifelong friendships, which is the amazing thing about jiu-jitsu. But I took a gentleman that's close to my same age and kind of took him under my wings, and he was my first blue belt that I made from scratch, right? But I put a lot of effort into him, and this was more of his issues, but he had, he wasn't getting, his goals in jiu-jitsu were different than maybe other people's goals. He made the goals for him his mindset was, I need to learn something that I can protect my family, right? And I'm doing this to protect my family. And that's okay to do that, but you got to remember, jiu-jitsu doesn't have all the answers. It's one element of self-defense, right? We're not talking about punching and kicking. We're not talking about Krav. We're not talking about Muay Thai. It's one element. And one day, someone came into the class and put him through the ringer, and he was fairly new. But that person that was fairly new on the outside, he had a white belt on, but he was going to every class during the week, not just the 6 a.m., but 6 a.m., doubling up, tripling up, midday and in the evening, because the guy fell in love with jiu-jitsu. Well, you don't see that from the belt that goes around your waist. So a hidden talent could be in there, right? Yeah, like you said, you took your first couple of months, and now you're probably setting goals for yourself. You've learned that you might start seeing techniques that work for you, and now you're trying to hone that skill set. Well, the white belt that came in, remember my friend that I put under my wings was already a blue belt. So the white belt, he didn't, they know each other because they've been going to class together. The white belt was putting in way more hours on the mat than the blue belt. And the white belt, as you know, as a white belt, sometimes you pick up a move that starts catching upper belts and you really snag onto it. You're like a one-trick pony, right? And that's okay, but you want to be well-rounded. But in the beginning, you'll snag whatever you can get. That's when you're making it a competition when you come to the class, right? I'm going there to submit somebody or completely control them. So with that, the white belt was putting these extra hours in, way more than the blue belt. The blue belt was early on, he was putting a lot of morning days, but he would never do the evenings. And so if he put in 5 days in the morning, the other gentleman was doing 5 days in the morning, but he was also doing 1 or 2 nights as well. So he could have 15 classes in a week.
Yeah. So it's not just the consistency; it's also the intensity.
Intensity, yeah. The more he's getting more reps for reps, and now the white belt's got a move that works for him, and he's using it every time he goes out there, because now he's catching upper belts. Now, it's okay to have that in the beginning, but as you go along in jiu-jitsu,
You need to diversify a little more.
Yeah, you find that you need to start, you want your stack of good moves not to be like this, and a stack like this of moves that, I'm just not going to do those. You want to do this, right? And these are probably limited to, things that my body just doesn't want to do, right? Maybe I have some injuries that I just cannot do that. They're high risk. Maybe if it's a sport, if you're a sports person, maybe these are self-defense moves that you just don't care about.
So it's almost like over time, or when you start out, you start out small, and then as you build up everything, it goes from your skill set is small to your skill set is large to everything that I'm afraid of becomes smaller.
Exactly. When you start figuring that out in jiu-jitsu, you're on the right path in my mind. Again, our end goals can all be different, but if you're looking at longevity, it's like if you're, like I said, the one-trick pony, and I'll get back to that story in a minute. But if you got that one move, when your opponent figures that move out, you're at scratch. You're at zero again, right? So, and it's okay. It's good that you get that move beat, because now you got to go to the next step and change your entrance into that move. Or, all right, okay, if this doesn't work, what do I do next? So now you start growing from that. So we all probably start with that one move that really works for us, and then as we go over time, our partners we were working with day in and day out, they start to understand what you're doing and they stop it. That forces you to grow. If you don't, you just sit there at that you're stagnant.
And stagnant water is always the one that breeds the most amount of parasites.
Exactly, right? Back to the white belt and the blue belt. Blue belt, I taught him everything I know, essentially. I've never held back anything when it comes to jiu-jitsu. And it's probably one of my things I need to work on. I give out a lot of information when people aren't ready to accept or can't handle all that information. But if I look at it as, I might throw too much out there, but if you just snag a little bit and you got the rest of it over here floating around, one day you'll start picking from that, and they start plugging together, and the puzzles that start falling together. And I want to turn any white belt into somebody that's biting, they're They're like, I want them to beat me eventually. I want, you're training snakes will bite, right? So the blue belt coming in, doing his regular routine, not going out of his way to put any more prep. He's wanting to save his family, and which is a good cause. There's nothing wrong with that. But what happens is this white belt's got his one move, and that one move taps this blue belt every morning. And I teach the blue belt a counter, because the white belt's trying to do the same move to me, but I teach him how to stop it. But and it's not that it was a guillotine, or I guess it'd be like a north-south choke / guillotine type of move that this person was doing, and making a strong frame to keep the person from closing the distance so they could wrap their arms around the neck. That frame kept collapsing, right? And I'd show him, but he wasn't putting the reps in to try to make that work. That frame just kept collapsing, and he would get choked every time. Well, it then turned into, jiu-jitsu's not good. How am I supposed to protect my family? Because, what am I wasting my time? The place we're training at doesn't offer 6 a.m. other martial arts. Well, what am I going to do? So they quit. And even after just tore my heart out. Remember, this is a gentleman that I put under my wings to teach something I'm very passionate about. And I told him, don't give up. And you could see the excuses that jiu-jitsu is just trash, and this place doesn't offer anything else. Why even do it? And I told him, just hang in there. You'll get it figured out, and it didn't work. And the sad thing about that was, and this goes back to make it about you, right? Is not only just being an instructor, but it's about, also you yourself. Now, if he would have took what was happening and just go in and try to make himself better every day and make it about him, but he made it more about, this guy's beating me. So he added somebody into the mix that if we just set goals for yourself, just showing up every day, you're improving yourself. But as soon as you make it about somebody else, it's no longer about you. So I seen that as a instructor. I got so hurt by that gentleman quitting that I looked deep into myself, and I'm like, I don't want that to happen anymore. That hurts too bad. Not that I don't want to help people out, but I got to reserve myself not to get pulled in so much that they might walk away one day, and then I take the blunt of the pain because I dedicated so much to that person.
Similar to the duality of consistency, that you can be both successfully consistent and you can also be consistent towards failure. Over time, if you start building and building, if you have the self-awareness of continually seeing what you did wrong, fixing it, continually seeing wrong, fixing it, you get this consistency of success that eventually, long-term, that's going to be you're going to succeed. But then there's also, you look at yourself, you say you did something wrong, you look at yourself, you say you did something wrong, and then that leads towards failure because it's the self-degradation.
I think you're absolutely correct about that. But I think at the end of the day, is as long as you make it about yourself, and I had to think about, how do I make it about myself, because I'm training this to others, and the rule of thumb, and I haven't really followed this yet, but my thought is, if you can get them past blue belt, and they stay, if they make a purple belt, then they're in. Because typically, once you get past that blue belt level and you start getting in purple, the less chances that you'll quit, and as further along you go. But not that to say that people don't quit at brown belt and black belt, they do. But so I told myself to, don't get so tied up into one of your students that they walk away as blue belts. And that happened. And he was a blue belt, but we had moved on. We were getting close. We were putting stripes on that belt. It wasn't like I got my blue belt and walked out the door. And I just had to, tell myself like, okay, not that I don't care about the people that I'm working with. I got to make it about me getting better as an instructor. How can I get better to make them stay? How can I get them loving jiu-jitsu like I do in the shortest amount of time so they don't walk away? I think a lot of people, the blue belts that quit, they haven't realized the true beauty of jiu-jitsu yet. And as long as I can spell that and get that into their system the fastest I can get that into their system and their mindset, the more likely they'll stick. But it kills me to watch somebody quit jiu-jitsu before they truly understand the beauty. It's not just choking somebody. It's not just submitting somebody. It's not just controlling somebody. It's a lifestyle that can lead to stress, like a less stressed life, and you can help yourself through devastation, things that have happened to you over time, and use it as a way of therapy, right? And I was lucky enough to have jiu-jitsu long enough in my life before I got hurt, and we'll get into that story, but to know that jiu-jitsu is going to be there when I was ready to get back to it, right? I knew the power of what jiu-jitsu could do to help with stress levels and help you through your daily grind of depression and things like that. So getting my students to that level, so if I disappear, they already have it. So they keep going. They don't quit their journey because I'm not in the picture anymore. They quit their journey because, well, life happens sometimes. Hopefully they come back, but until you see that picture, the blue belt that quit on me, his visions of jiu-jitsu were not realistic. And what I mean by that is jiu-jitsu is an amazing martial art, but it doesn't have all the answers. If I had to pick one out of all of them, it would be jiu-jitsu because it has the best chance of nullifying, to me, it has the best chance of nullifying all the other martial arts. But all it takes is one little move from the other martial arts and all your jiu-jitsu is gone, right, out of your mind. So nothing, I'm not talking bad about other martial arts. There's some beauty of and something you can take from every single one of those. Even the ones that you may say like, man, that's black magic or something going on there. There's always something you can get from it.
I have two questions, depending on where you want to go. You can answer both, or you can answer just one, and then we'll just go off on that tangent. The first question, or one question, is that the difference between, or is that partially that a lot of people, when they hit the blue belt or something, they want to become the expert, but without the experience? And then the other question that you might actually want to tie into, or might go on that tangent, is that how you're approaching mission athletics?
Let's start with your first one. Can you repeat the first one?
The first one is in the entire timeline of jiu-jitsu, of like going from a white belt to a black belt, from your experience. A lot of when people quit, is it sometimes, well, there's obviously, I mean, like their morale goes down or their self-confidence go down, but is it also partially that people want to become the expert without the experience? Or have the same satisfaction of being the expert and being very knowledgeable about it without the long-term commitment of getting the reps in?
That's what usually stops them right in their tracks very early. And I think you're spot on that one as well, the question. It took me a moment to understand, but immediately it hit me that, I've had new students come in, or people like the first day they're on the mat, or they're coming in to check it out and haven't signed up yet. And their first question is, how long does it take to become a black belt? Right there is, and don't get me wrong, I wasn't one of those asking that. It was in my head because my goal was always to be a black belt someday. But having wrestling already and knowing how difficult that could be, and knowing that we got a rank system here and we got curriculum that we got to learn, and it's not just doing kata, you have to do things that have to be effective, right? But if you're so fascinated or
Tied up in
tied up in the idea of, I want a black belt, and when if you're looking at them when you answer the question, immediately you see the surprise on their face. 10, 15 years, unless you're some super duper athlete, world freestyle wrestling champion, or you're a judo black belt or something that's already got you a lead in.
That's what Dave says all the time. How long does it take for the average person to get a black belt? The average person is not going to get a black belt.
That's exactly right. And if you're looking at them in the eyes when you answer that, you know right away they're not going to last, because some people just want things given to them, right, without earning it. And going back to wrestling again, you have to earn every bit of that, because no one else is going to earn it for you. And if you don't have that discipline and you lose all the time, most likely you quit on your own. But losing is more important than winning when you begin, because you learn from losing. But if you don't have that mindset of knowing that, because early on in jiu-jitsu, winning is all you think about. I don't want to tap. I got my shoulder blown out. I just, my knees shredded. It's because the ego and the idea that I'm here to beat up my partners, beat up my friends that I'm doing jiu-jitsu with just for that tap, when it should be, hey, let's work together, let's drill, let's not hurt each other, and do it in a way that you have longevity. It's okay to have a goal of being a black belt.
But that shouldn't be the only goal.
That shouldn't be the only goal. And the thing is, I might have said, I'm not saying that everybody, that their eyes go, wow, 10, 15 years to get a black belt. If they after asking that question, doesn't mean that they're not going to have the work ethic and the abilities to do it. But a lot of times when I see that, their mindset is that black belt only. It doesn't have all that other stuff. And when we all begin, we have a little bit of that. Most of us have that in our head: black belt, black belt, black belt. And that's the point of getting past blue belt to a certain point, that you understand that it's more than just a belt. It's more than, just going there and tapping people. It takes a little while. And if I can get people loving jiu-jitsu sooner than later, my thoughts on that is retention, and lower turnover, right? Because and I can't, and I'm not going to lash out at somebody for asking that question or having that mindset, because I'm not going to lie, I probably had a little bit of that myself, but I knew that it would take a lot of work to do it. But I was confident that first day when I spent $80 on my son's gi and $120 on my gi, and I hadn't even took the class yet. But that first one was the worst one I ever had, because I had a wrestling background, and I turned out that failed me. It helped, but it made me too aggressive. And it wasn't a sport no more. I was dying. Yeah, right? I mean, and the taps, I'm glad the first move I learned was a tap, because I probably wouldn't be here today. But it took brown belts, black belts, that I was starting at Pedro's back in those days. It was a little different than a lot of places now, but you would line at the end of class, the last half hour or 45 minutes, depending on how long the class was, you would line up across from a person, and there'd be a line of people here and a line of people on the other side, and one line would stay still. You'd grapple for 5 minutes, do some push-ups, move over one, and you'd get a different partner all the way to the end. Now, what that taught us was, if you tap, you go 100% on the first one, you ain't going to make it to the very end. And if you let your partner, the person across from you, not have a partner because you walked away or you just couldn't continue, they kind of forced you to do push-ups. Because if your goal was not leave someone standing without a partner to train with. So it taught you to hold back. Don't go out and throw 100% of everything out there, and not reserve some to to make sure you get to the end of the line.
So it's endurance over strength.
Yeah, and in wrestling, you essentially train yourself to make it through a whole match, which is time based. After that match, you go take a break, then you get ready for your next match. And if it comes down to self defense, and you're going out there and you're swinging to the fences, and next thing you know, your arms are worn out, and the other person standing across you smiles because they got jiu-jitsu in their back pocket. Your arms that are worn out, or the kicks that you were throwing, your legs were worn out. You're a sitting duck at that point, right? So that's again, training on a time base, like wrestling. We can train to sprint for a whole match, so your cardio is, unbeatable, but preparation's wrong and your cardio is good, but that day it could be off. So in jiu-jitsu, when I go and I get on the mat and I try to teach my students to don't go out there and throw 100% out there, be as efficient as possible, and it's okay to tap, and it's okay to lose, and so just live to go to the next person across from you, so you can just keep going without walking away.
Because it's going to be really interesting to see what your mindset is now before it, because it's not open yet, right?
Nope. We're going to be opening in the fall.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what your mindset is beforehand, and then like if we do another podcast, like maybe a year from now, once you have like 6 or 7 months of understanding how it all works, like what's that change? Like what did you learn? And then that's mostly not. I mean, partially this is more like getting Mission Athletics on something a little more professional, but also I'm kind of curious, like how do you want to approach Mission Athletics?
My approach to Mission Athletics is to make jiu-jitsu for everybody. No matter, can't start at 2 years old.
Accessible to everyone?
That would be a goal as well. But then that sometimes comes down to affordability. And if a student has the money to be able to join.
So I was thinking more of like there's like making jiu-jitsu for everyone would be almost impossible because not everyone wants to do jiu-jitsu. But when I meant like, well, I guess like there's accessibility in terms of money, but I was making it more like accessibility towards like making a better quality jiu-jitsu gym.
The last one is definitely right. Quality is priority, and my goal is for low turnover. I don't want students to get hurt, and that's the reason for leaving or quitting. I guess when I say jiu-jitsu, because jiu-jitsu may not be for everyone, right? But those that don't wrestle, or those that have never done grappling, but they want, I guess what I mean by for making it for everybody would be if you're willing to walk in the door and you want to try it, I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to try it and also make it about you. That person walks in, their goals are going to be different to the one behind them coming in the door. So maybe it's a student, a girl getting ready to start college, and she wants a little bit of self-defense because she likes running the paths at night right before the sun goes down, or it might be a student that's getting bullied. They never grappled before, but they don't want to do any kind of competitions, but they want to, again, how can I protect myself at school? It could be someone that just wants the exercise side of it. I don't want to leave anybody out. If someone walks to the door and they go they've had their back broken, or they have a shoulder problem, or they're 80 years old. I don't want to turn them away. I want to show them things that they can do and protect them, and then monitor them in a way that I'm not going to pair them with a student that may hurt them.
So it's making jiu-jitsu adaptable to everyone.
I guess that would be that's a good way of putting it, right? Another example is one of the groups of folks that I will be teaching jiu-jitsu to will be police forces in Iowa. Yep, law enforcement. I've been in contact with some of the sheriff's department for Lynn County, Iowa. They have trained at other jiu-jitsu places, and they quit. One of them quit because he was actually going against a felon that had something against cops, and it turned into, it was started out as jiu-jitsu, but then the other person started aggressively getting, attacking them and not obeying to taps and turning it into fistfights, because this person had a problem against law enforcement. Well, the law enforcement guy just quit. He's like, I'm not going to go and do this if I have people attacking me.
So it sounds like it's not just jiu-jitsu, because you also need like Muay Thai, you need a little bit of judo because jiu-jitsu is mostly, because once you add like fists and you make it more of a standing game, then jiu-jitsu like doesn't become as prevalent.
If you think of jiu-jitsu as just as a martial art that is for defending yourself, again, we don't see the other sides of things, like and we'll talk about this one. My most favorite move in jiu-jitsu is not what you would think it'd be. I'm good at guillotines. I'm good at some certain chokes, cross chokes and things like that, sweeps. But my favorite move is standing base, because it taught me the most efficient way to get off the ground in a life-saving event that it needed to happen. So the police force, even though you think that punching and kicking is something that they need to know, it's better that they know something how to defend that. And they have to know a little bit of it to understand what's coming at them. But the goal is to defend themselves in a way that they're not breaking the nose or breaking the jaw of someone that's breaking the law.
Yeah, that would be really complicated. It's not, because as a police officer, you're not just trying to de-escalate the situation, you're also trying to prevent anything more from happening.
Yeah, and then environment is a big part too. If you're on the side of the road and it's just one person that you pulled over as it's giving you a problem, is different than being in the city where there's a event going on and there's thousands of people, and then that one person has 20 different friends. The cop's in trouble if they end up cornered or on the ground. That they could be in a lot of danger, right? I don't believe that an old saying that Pedro Sauer used to say or talk about, and I'll probably mess it up, but the main thing about what I got out of it was, if I had somebody that wanted to fight me or attack me, I'd much rather take them down, control them, ask them nicely. I know that's a weird thing to say in the middle of getting into a fight, but if I'm not worried about the environment around me, because it's just one-on-one, I would hold them down and have a conversation with them, and they'll know being controlled where they can't get off the ground. They'll understand that they're probably not in a good place. Now, if I would have knocked their teeth out or broke their nose and left the scene of the crime,
The big difference.
they're going to come back with their friends later on and they're not going to forget, right? But if I said, hey, I'm going to let you up, but if you come back and you try to attack me, it's going to be a little different result than what's happening right now, right? And they get up, you shake hands, you walk your separate ways. He doesn't come back with his friends later on and try to get revenge, because he's got to look in the mirror every day and see that black eye, see that chipped tooth or that broken jaw, and it's going to be problems, right? So in a law enforcement scenario, you can have a bunch of different environments that you're in, scenarios. So there's not one cookie cutter thing that can happen. Well, that's why you don't want to be a one-trick pony. You want to know different things that will help you in the environment that you're in. And with jiu-jitsu, and like if there's a martial art out there that tells you that we can take 20 opponents at once, and they see them walk in one at a time, That's not how real life works. In that situation, my jiu-jitsu is going to first give me situational awareness of where I'm at, and understand that, boy, if I go to the ground here, it's going to be a bad day because 20 of those people are going to be kicking and punching me, right? But if I had to know a martial art and I ended up on the ground, which one would I need? Which one would help me the most? To me, it's jiu-jitsu, because we learn how to, if, and we sometimes forget to teach this, but standing base, if you do that the same way, every time you're on the ground in jiu-jitsu, you build up muscle memory. So when you're on the ground later on in an event that attack, you don't have to think about getting off the ground.
It's actually kind of funny. I slipped on some ice close to here, and what was weird is my first reaction was to do a side break fall.
Yep.
The first thing, like, I didn't think about it. I just slipped. I was like, oh, going to the ground.
Guess what happens when that head hits the ground?
Yeah.
You may never get up. The same thing as if you're being thrown because some attacker comes up behind you, or you want to avoid being thrown. But if you are being thrown, how do I get to the ground as safe as I can? Sometimes I don't have the control, but sometimes you just got to go with what's being given and try to survive on the other side of what happens when you hit the ground. Resistance to something that's like getting hit with the earth is going to make that trauma a lot worse. But if you realize you're in a position and movement is happening, you should already not be thinking, but your natural response should be to do that repetitive action that you did every time in class, break fall, so you land safely. And the angles can change, but in rotation, we learn a couple different ways to break fall: forward, backwards, side, and that kind of covers the whole area. But if I never trained the side one, I would probably do the break fall wrong being thrown. The side one is very important. It can be for ice, like you said, the backwards when the feet go flying forward. I got to make sure my head doesn't hit the ground. So that sometimes it's not just needing to know how to punch, how to kick. It's just, you just need to know what's coming at you. I don't need to be an expert at throwing kicks. I don't need to be an expert at throwing punches. But what I need to have muscle memory is what kind of punches can come at me. Haymaker, straight down the middle. What's coming at me? Well, if my hands are here in a self-defense manner, this automatically forces them to kind of throw haymakers in most cases. So if I know, I'm already premeditating what kind of punch is going to come at me, because I've put a frame up that kind of blocks that straight punch down the middle. So you already know it's going to come around the outside because they're head hunting, right? So it's just, being, yet again, well-rounded and understanding that jiu-jitsu is not just a choke. It's not just a strangle or a breaking a limb. It's simple as a break fall or situational awareness is probably more likely to save your life than knowing how to choke somebody.
Yeah.
Meaning, go out there and survive. Don't do moves that will put you in jeopardy. Which makes jiu-jitsu not just self-defense, but you could mutate it into MMA better if you had a self-defense mindset. If you take jiu-jitsu and you go into MMA and you have a sports background, it doesn't say that you're going to be bad, but you might do a move that puts you underneath where you can get punched in the face and you have no defenses to block that. Or you can do moves that have you doing blocks. It's jiu-jitsu, but you're protecting your face, which I have to do all the time because I can't take that hit because my jaw's already pretty weak still, right? It's been fixed, but it's not fixed, right? So my goal is to, I wish sports jiu-jitsu didn't have a time clock, but some of it you won't have enough time in a day to do a match if it goes on and on and on. So doing jiu-jitsu for points, again, I'm not against it, but if you're in the mindset of like wrestling, you train yourself to do a 10-minute match or jiu-jitsu, a 10-minute match, but after that, you walk away. Well, you might not have an opportunity. If you only train for 10, you probably, in a life situation, could be 20 minutes, but you can't survive that long because you dump everything because your muscle memory and training is going to stop you at 10 minutes, right? Versus every time you get on the mat, your self-defense is survival first, then you can submit, but not with a points mindset. Now, again, if your goal in life is to be the best world champion in jiu-jitsu, and if you want to win with an advantage, get a gold medal with an advantage, I'll be there to support that, right? But I would love to see those folks do it in a mindset that don't worry about the clock, which you have to worry about the clock, but go out there and go for that submission. If it means losing a few points in the beginning to do it, but use it to set up for where you want to hone them into a submission that wins you the match, because the match may be an hour in real life, or it could be 1 minute in that same life, right? So that's what I wanted to bring to Mission Athletics is that type of jiu-jitsu. Now, Mission Athletics is also going to be wrestling. It's going to be heavily based on wrestling. Back to the Midwest again, wrestling is huge. You can throw a rock and hit a wrestler in Iowa, right? At Mission, we built a wrestling team that is absolutely amazing, and I have a feeling it's going to change the outlook of Iowa wrestling with this team. We have 2-time national champions. We have a lady that Lauren's her name. She has been on the world scene. She's been in freestyle, and as you know, women's wrestling is skyrocketing right now in school, which is amazing. It's awesome to see that happen, because that's a lead into a basic self-defense. They're imagine being a woman and know how to grapple and have the abilities to protect yourself. It starts with any type of grappling, and with Lauren there, with her, what she's done in women's wrestling in her career, she's going to draw a lot of young women and girls into the sport that is a wonderful sport. It's still a sport, but it's grounds to being more than that, right? And that's, I would like to take it, but again, not everybody wants to be a wrestler. They're going to have family members that want to wrestle, don't want to do sports, but boy, I sure wish I could protect myself a little bit. And my goal is not to promise anybody anything, but if I had something in my back pocket that I wanted to give myself a fighting chance to survive, it would be jiu-jitsu, right? And but again, staying off the ground is half the bat. I mean, that's most of it right there. And that's what I want to pass to Mission Athletics. And cross-pollinate wrestling more with jiu-jitsu. And I believe in the approach that we're doing, we're going to create, a very good foundation for MMA. Without the kicking and punching, that's not my job. And I prefer to send them down the road to learn that from another school. I believe in, things being like not that we couldn't hire someone to teach Muay Thai and other martial arts, but I think taking two different grappling arts and bringing them together, you're only bettering both of them. If I learned how to do jiu-jitsu before I learned how to wrestle, I truly believe that my wrestling would have been better because of the way we teach it. We break it down a little bit differently when we teach jiu-jitsu than wrestling. Now, and it's all about who was before you and who your coaches are, and how they approach their classes, right? Say you teach a double leg takedown, but there's a lot of details that are missing, and it's all about muscle memory, right? So that wrestler goes out and they put in 1,000 reps, but there's some details that maybe weren't, maybe could be better. Now you've etched into your wrestling with 1,000 reps, your muscle memory, something that could end up being a work against you later on. And it could be just a very little detail, right? So doing 1,000 reps on something that's not perfect, and nothing's perfect, but you could set yourself up to fail if you don't have the finer details in some cases.
So I didn't get enough sleep last night, so I am completely wiped. Which also I think we got a lot.
Oh, I hope that
That's plenty. This
hopefully
is more than plenty.
I hope you can piece it together.
Should be all right. I'll ask you. So usually on the very end, I usually ask the person, who do you want to be in 10 years, and what would you have told yourself 10 years ago?
Myself in 10 years, I'll be 60, right? In grappling years or dog years, that 60-year-olds on mat, you start seeing less of them, people on the mat at that point. Now, you're not going to see 60-year-old wrestlers wrestling. But again, I want to create an environment that those 60-year-old wrestlers can come and do jiu-jitsu, right? I want to, 10 years from now, I would love to see Mission Athletics, having students, my own sons, teaching classes, and seeing it being a family environment, and me still being on the mat, but watching my boys take the reins of my passion and making it their passion, and then once I'm gone, it still lives on, right? And that's like I'm really close to David, and I learned a lot of jiu-jitsu from David, and I want to make him proud, right? He's younger than me, so in 10 years, I hope I'm still making him proud, and again, that's that jiu-jitsu family that you could be halfway across the world, and that bond doesn't break. And you can talk to that person once a year, but as soon as you meet up again, it's like you never left, right? So 10 years from now, I'm hoping David's still competing. I hope I'm still on the mat, which I know I will be. And I'll be sitting in a chair, hopefully watching my sons teach the classes.
And what would you have told yourself 10 years ago?
10 years ago, I would have said, tap early, right? Longevity. And you could tell a young person walking in the door, hey, take your time, slow down, tap early, don't tap late. But they're not going to listen to you. They won't. You think they will, but if I could go back, I remember my fingers were so jacked up that they didn't work for years. They hurt. And it took me finally telling myself, don't use my grips. And then they finally came back to, they're not normal, but they don't hurt as bad as they did. It took a few years to figure that one out. And it's the same thing. don't, if you have to work too hard at it, you're overdoing it. And it's okay to tap. It's okay to say, if you don't want to roll somebody, it's okay to do that. It's your journey. I should have made it more about myself back then versus bringing other people to make me feel like I was competing with my own teammates because I want to tap them. And it's good to have that because it grows them. And you want to be efficient at this stuff. You have to train with realism or you won't believe in what you're doing. Because if you just do it where you don't roll, if you never roll, you're never going to know what you know works. But yeah, I think I spread that out a little bit longer than 10 years, but that's, yeah, slow down, tap early, let your ego go, and longevity will follow.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you.
All right, bud. Thank you. Awesome.
Oh, my head.
I'm sorry you had to sit and listen to.
No, that's fine. This is not the hard part. The hard part is editing.
Yeah.
I have to listen to all this again.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know if I ever told you the cop story, but you might have seen it in postings and stuff like that about the deputy sheriff or the highway patrolman. Yeah. So if people watch the documentary, they don't ever hear that side of the story because the documentary is about survival. It's not about going after a police force that failed, right, in their job duties. And I never wanted to make it like that, right?
Yeah.
So